Okay, great. All right, here we are, our second evening of budget deliberations. So this evening, the only thing we have on our agenda is to look specifically at our Department of Public Works and other sort of related functions that fall under that umbrella. So we have several staff joining us today. We did not have any specific questions, and this department does not have any requests above the mayor's budget. So we can really do one of two things here. I know Cynthia had submitted a bunch of questions. I think, unfortunately, Steve was not able to get to them. Steve's probably better to answer them than Mike, so we will email the answers to those questions out to council. And if you want to ask any clarifying questions at a future meeting, we absolutely could do that. So I don't know that we can go through all of the ones that you had asked over email, Cynthia, right now. But I guess I will give Mike an opportunity to give just maybe an overview or quick highlights of what's in your narrative, and then we'll open the floor for questions from council. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, Mike, go for it.
Thanks, Deb. First of all, I want to introduce Mark Verbanek as our new Assistant Superintendent at Streets and Facilities. So we're glad to pick him up about, what, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? Can't remember. But he was our construction engineer out at Streets and Facilities for 3 years, and we're real happy to put him in this position. Also some sad news, but also some good news. Eric Whitney is retiring tomorrow. So tomorrow is his last day. We will be putting Scott Gibson in as our acting assistant superintendent for the time being. And Scott is more than familiar with all of our water and sewer works throughout the city. So excited to have them both here. And then not to stop Tim, but Tim's here too. Tim's been around a while. So let's see. So overall, the budget is kind of expected. We were given the direction to prepare two budgets, as you all know, a -3% budget and a -15% budget. And we felt that it would probably fall somewhere in between. I think I calculated the overall impact to DPW, and I think our overall impact is about just under -4%. So, you know, we were close. I'm glad that we were closer to the -3 number than the -15 number. The biggest impacts to public works. Well, first of all, let me say that most of our divisions are not impacted. We've had to, you know, try to cut some expenses a little bit, but overall, engineering should function as it has been. Parking and transportation, the same. Water and sewer, fortunately, we were able to keep all the new crews intact. Where the big hit is where the general fund comes in, and it's our streets and facilities. And so we've lost 8 positions out of streets and facilities. These were unfunded vacant positions, but also, unfortunately, we also had to lay 2 people off, Kathy Servos and Mike Raftis. And, you know, we understand that we're in very unusual times. We're not requesting any above the mayor's budget, but in my budget narrative, I did make a plea that once the financial situation returns to normal, that I would ask that we get that additional paving crew funded, because the streets and our stormwater systems and things like that, they haven't stopped for COVID. They're still deteriorating. And, you know, the whole purpose behind getting the new crews was to at least level things off and hopefully start to make some forward progress on our infrastructure. So we actually never hired the full new crew. We were hoping to do that in 2020. COVID hit early on in the year, and so we didn't make any progress there. My biggest concern is we do have some senior field staff in streets and facilities that are retirement eligible. And one of my big concerns is that once the funding gets somewhere back to normal, you know, next year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now, we're going to lose a lot of institutional knowledge. So that's my biggest concern. But right now, I think some of the impacts that we're going to see, and I need to sit down with both Mark and probably Scott Gibson a little bit, see how we can maybe not make the hit so bad for streets and facilities. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. Mark and I also need to sit down and look at some of the positions, because when I turn in the budget, which you don't see, but Steve and Dan and Savante see, I've got a large list of positions and people. And the vacant positions were unfunded. Some of those vacant positions that were unfunded, we'd like to fund and sort of trade out, you know, some of the other positions. So, you know, the exact positions that were listed in the mayor's budget may change a little bit, but the bottom line budget should remain the same. I guess some of the effects right now that were not associated with the highway crew is Steve Mann. I think he's okay on custodial duties right now, but he did send us a warning that once Southside Community Center opens up again, he's going to have some trouble juggling some of the custodial work between Southside and the police station. So maybe that's something we address at the time. I still need to sit with Mark and Steve Mann to discuss how we might look at that. One of the unfunded positions that we need to look at as well is a working supervisor in our sign shop. And this was Mike Austin, who retired earlier this year. And that position took care of the striping and signage in the city. And so we don't want to lose that capability. And Mark and I need to kind of put our heads together and figure out how we're going to keep that service to the level that we need it to be. I think that's it. I think I touched on all the positions. Did I miss any, Mark? We had five positions lost off the highway crew, one out of the sign shop, a custodian, and there was one other one.
Yeah, there was a maintainer and two laborers.
Yeah. So 8 positions total. But again, we understand that the times we're in, and you know, it is what it is. We hope we can get funding restored in the future, because you know, we need to be able to fix our infrastructure, and it's definitely more cost effective if we're able to do that in-house. So open for any questions.
Great. Just a quick reminder to everyone, we want to be as sensitive as possible to some of the people that are going to be very directly impacted. So if we want to have conversations about things, let's try to remember to use position titles if possible, instead of calling out particular people. So as we move forward in our discussion, let's just be sensitive that this is very challenging for people, specifically those that are unfortunately being did by the staff reduction. So
right. I apologize for naming names, and I appreciate that.
Very hard, and it's challenging, and we care about everybody that works for the city deeply, and I know there's a fine line between wanting them to know that we care about them and figuring out how to have a discussion without any personal anything coming into it. So it's tough. You're okay. Just moving forward, we'll do our best to to be sensitive to all of these very, very, very challenging things that are in front of us. So, Laura.
Thank you. And thanks, Mike, and thanks, Mark. Mike, I sent you a question and you replied right away. I just wanted to have a full understanding and clarity on the changes in equipment and supplies on a number of the DPW funds. So just for the benefit of the public who may be viewing or looking at this later, could you say something about those changes?
Sure. So as I replied, but for the public's benefit, when we asked for funding for the new water and sewer crews, we had asked for 5 positions, and we had also calculated how much the additional cost would be on an annual basis to replace an additional mile of underground piping in the city, either water or sewer pipe. And so when I put the memo together, I was kind of looking at, you know, sort of long-term impacts. And I think I probably put a large chunk of money in materials and not so much in equipment. When we did get the funding, you know, we weren't fully staffed. We didn't quite have all our plans together and everything like that. But in order to get ready for that new crew, what we did is we bought new equipment with that money. And Scott, you can name those pieces of equipment, but I know we bought a couple dump trucks and I think a mini excavator and a couple of other pieces of equipment. And so now that that equipment is there to support the new crew, we need to take that same level of funding and replenish some of our supplies and pipes and fittings and hydrants and other construction materials. So that's why you see a large shift between the equipment line item and the construction materials line item.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Other questions related to Public Works? Donna.
So Mike, I think you said that you're losing 8 positions and we know what 2 of those are, but I think you said that of the other 6, you still have some flexibility about what they might be. Is that right?
Overall, we've lost 10 positions, 2 layoffs and 8 unfunded positions.
Okay, got it. All right.
And so where, and I hope maybe I was a little confusing there, but some of the positions that were actually named, like for example, a maintainer position and a working supervisor position, Mark and I really need to kind of sit down and plan this out so that we stick to whatever the budget amount is. But some of the vacant positions we may fill and actually leave other positions vacant, or we may have to shuffle our staffing around a little bit in streets and facilities.
I get it. So the bottom line will come out the same. You'll just figure it out.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
What other questions are there? Duxon?
You mentioned that you never did fill out a full second street crew. So how much extra street paving do we get in 2020 versus 2019, or whatever the appropriate comparison years are?
Well, when we got the funding for the new highway crew, we started to hire a number of positions, but at the same time, we also had a number of retirements. And so I don't think we had a net gain of any real positions. At the start of 2020, we were hoping to start backfilling and training some of those positions for the highway crew. But back in March, when we could all see the writing on the wall, everything just kind of fell apart. So a lot of those vacant positions we had on the highway crew were actually furloughed, if you will. or hiring freeze, however you want to describe it. And so that hiring freeze is sort of carrying over into the 2021 budget.
Graham?
Hi, thanks, and thanks for your response to the current situation. I really appreciate the way you're planning and doing the succession and trying to help the city. I wanted to go back to, I think, Donna's question about the positions. So the mayor gave us a list of the positions that were defunded. Are those the positions that are being defunded, or are you looking at that and maybe making some changes? I just wanted to get a sense that the list included the building and grounds maintenance worker, working supervisor for sign shop. That list there, is that fixed now, or are you still thinking about those positions?
No, and maybe let me try to explain it another way. We're going to take the funding associated with those positions. Maybe that's not more clear, but we'll keep the budget the same, even though the actual positions may change a little bit. So we might fill a maintainer and not fill another LEO, or we might, promote an LEO and not backfill the LEO. It's the bottom line should remain the same. So hopefully everybody doesn't just get stuck on those particular positions. Those just happen to be the ones that were currently vacant when we turned in the budget.
Right.
So Steve there didn't really have anything else to go off of.
So you'll be looking at the aggregate value of all of those positions and then triaging what makes the most sense to fill, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify that I think we've fully understood now that the new street crew that was recently approved is not being filled. But we do, in fact, have the additional crew associated with water and sewer, and that was made possible through the stormwater funding. Is that correct? So we do have one new crew that came on, because if I recall correctly, and God, my brain is a muddle, so I apologize if I've gotten this wrong. We had actually approved 2 new crews, a streets crew and a water and sewer crew also associated with stormwater upgrades. So we do have the new crew associated with stormwater upgrades. Is that correct?
No, we have a new crew associated with water and sewer.
Okay, so we do have a new crew associated with water and sewer?
Correct.
Right.
So we have the 1.4 million coming from the Stormwater Fund. That goes into DPW. So is that going to water and sewer?
No, Cynthia, that's handled out of streets and facilities. The stormwater catch basins and piping and stuff is handled through our office.
Okay, so
I have a crew in our thing, and we haven't been able to expand that lately.
so we have stormwater funding that's then sent to DPW, 1.4 million. But we don't have. So that just started a couple years ago, and there was, if I understand, a crew that was supposed to assist through streets and facilities to address these improvements. That 1.4 is not, that's an assessment, so that's not associated with the loss of sales tax and so on. So what is that 1.4 million funding? And so I'm seeing this loss, which I understand is being associated with the economic situation, but that 1.4 million is still being transferred over. And this is, again, this commingling of the accounts has always been a source of confusion for me. So I'm just trying to make sure that if we are paying, if our constituents are paying a stormwater assessment fee, that there is services associated with that fee?
Oh, yes, definitely. We do definitely, whenever we analyze a road, we'll go through and have, do the stormwater analysis too, to see if we can upgrade the pipes and make sure that they're all in working order, because a lot of things are reaching their age. So along with that, we also have crew going around and cleaning the catch basins, repairing the DIs that have been damaged or whatever kind of situation. And they kind of analyze each and every structure. They go through all year, and we'll suck them and clean them and make sure all the roots are out of the system. So that's what that does. And that funds a certain crew that goes around and does that on a daily basis. And then at the same time, some of our highway crews will use the stormwater funding to repair internal structures when we're redoing a road. Say like for Chestnut, we're replacing a pipe that crossed near Sunrise, and we'll include that into our design and construction.
Dan, did you have something to clarify as well?
Yeah, I think we pretty much addressed the same exact question last year. So I believe that video is still up on the city's website, so you could probably go back and rewatch the meeting from last year. But I will say that the adjustment to the stormwater fee was premised on the fact that we were already spending enough money on stormwater to justify increasing the stormwater fee without even increasing a whole new crew or doing any additional work. So there's nothing inappropriate that's happening here. We currently do enough stormwater work every year with our streets and facilities stormwater team, and the percentage of time that our streets and facilities crew work on things that are attributable to stormwater to more than cover the amount of money that we charge to the stormwater fund. And then, of course, there's still additional stormwater work that we're doing that is paid out of the general fund. But I don't think it makes sense to continue to have the same conversation year after year. So maybe you could go back and rewatch that from last year, and then, you know, if there's any additional questions that aren't answered from last year, we could address them at a later time.
Yeah, and just a further clarification, the stormwater fund totals $1,400,000. That's to pay for, you know, a crew that works on stormwater. The only amount that goes back to the general fund is about $385,000 of that, and that helps offset some of the costs related to the what the general fund is doing for stormwater. In addition, some of the positions that were unfunded and were vacant also had some percentage that they were also working on stormwater. And so that corresponding decrease in the stormwater fund was reflected there. So it's not that we're transferring $1,400,000 to the general fund. The only transfer to the general fund is $385,000 of the total stormwater costs.
Other questions? I see Donna and then Seth.
Like I saw it somewhere today and I don't remember where, your reference to the street lights. So we've bought them now? Is that right? And if so, will we see a decrease in the contract with NYSEG in this year? And why did the NYSEG crew show up after 2 years and finally change a bulb in the one outside my house 2 days ago?
Let me give you an update on the streetlight thing. It's been frustratingly long in just obtaining the streetlights from NYSEG. I think I've said before that I don't think NYSEG really wanted to get rid of them in the first place, so I think they sort of dragged their feet a little bit. We have paid for the streetlights. We've turned in our submittals to NYSEG, and so Steve and I are both waiting on a letter from NYSEG that says, congratulations, you now own the streetlights. And we're expecting that probably within the next 2 weeks, hopefully. Once that occurs, we should see a savings because at that point, our electricians will take over streetlight maintenance. We're in the process of already getting a few replacement bulbs, I think about 100 or so that some of the broken streetlights can be fixed right away by our own crews. But we'll put in the LED lights when we fix those lights. Tim has been working on a bid package. What we're hoping to do is just put it out to bid to an electrical contractor to go ahead and purchase lights and replace all the remaining Cobra heads in the city. Any street light that's not a Cobra head, and there's a handful of those, we'll just do with our own in-house forces. We have 2 years in order to make the conversion, and that's part of the reason that we're hiring a contractor to do most of the work, because we can't do that in-house. But I think about 10% of our lights we'll be able to do ourselves in-house. So the savings that are shown in the budget show the immediate savings from us just owning the street lights. Once the LED lights are put up, we should have additional energy cost savings, but we don't know when we're going to realize those savings. A lot of it depends on when the contractor is able to finish the project of replacing the street lights, but we assume probably late spring, early summer, we should start seeing those energy savings as well. I think I sent a memo out a couple months ago about DPW's approach on this, and I'm trying to remember what was in the memo, but I believe that once we own the lights and everything's been converted, the street light bill has been about $340,000 a year. That should drop down to about the 120 range. But Steve kept it at 240 for right now because there's still a few unknowns. So it's a little bit conservative right now.
Line item is that?
That's account A3311, and that's in the contractual service in that account 5435. So you'll see a number in there, $240,000. And I should say that since we anticipated NYSEG selling us the streetlights a couple of years ago, we actually reduced the budget for this function 2 years ago, and have not seen those reductions in cost yet. And so hopefully, although I just saw one more bill come through my office today, hopefully that will be the last bill that we'll have to pay full cost for those streetlights, and we can start realizing some of the savings and then further savings once we convert to LED.
Thank you.
Yep.
But I think Seth was next.
Yeah, I had a question about the parking study and also about just overall parking operations in the city, because I've kind of lost track of where we are with that study and the timeline for it, and also if there is going to be an eventual plan to replace the parking director, and I guess like what the pandemic is doing overall to the parking budget and what we can expect from that. Sorry, there's a kind of a lot in there, but I don't know if.
No, it's a good question. First of all, we have replaced the parking director. Eric Hathaway, we promoted him into that position back in February. We have not been able to backfill his position yet. We've gotten approval to go ahead and advertise, and so that advertisement for Eric Hathaway's old position should go out fairly soon, hopefully in the next week or so.
So is Eric, is that currently his title is parking director, or is he still?
We changed the title. We changed it to Director of Parking and Transportation.
Right. Okay.
To kind of fall in line with what a number of other cities do, the way they organize things. right now, Tim and Eric are kind of sharing that new position because we're still sort of working out the details of how that organizational structure will work, especially with the building space that we have and that sort of thing. So either way, we're going to pick up a transportation engineer, probably split between the parking division and the engineering division. The parking study was moving forward full speed ahead. Then COVID hit. One of the things that has tripped up the parking study is that there was a large amount of public meetings and public outreach that was going to take place. So that's kind of been put on hold. The other piece of the puzzle was that we're also working on some scoping documents for a transportation study that would dovetail in with the parking study. A big piece of the transportation study will also be public outreach. So we were hoping to get some efficiencies by combining the two studies together. Currently, we don't have a clear scope on the transportation study. We're still working on that, but we're short-staffed on being able to just work with a consultant and figure out exactly what we want to do. There's also a lot of moving parts with transportation right now, especially on the west end, and we're trying to figure out how that would play into a transportation study. We do not have funding for the transportation study right now. Before COVID hit, the parking consultant went out and they got a lot of good information on parking counts up in College Town and in the garages. So that data has already been collected. They're able to grind through some of those numbers. I know Eric Hathaway is not here tonight, but he's also been working with planning on the demolition of the Green Street Garage and the reconstruction of the Green Street Garage. The good news with the pandemic and this garage replacement is that parking demand is a little bit lower in the garage right now. So, you know, if there's a silver lining on all of this, it's that, you know, that we can rebuild the Green Street Garage without having too much impact on downtown parking. So it's still a little bit up in the air, and Seth, I'm not sure I answered all your questions.
No, that was great. It was very informative. Thank you.
Okay.
I see Laura. Did I miss? No, I didn't miss anyone. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, you said that there's no funding for a transportation study. What would a study like that perhaps cost? What's your estimate on what a study would cost?
The parking study, I can't remember, but it was about 175 or so, and we were anticipating that the transportation study would probably be in that ballpark range. We haven't put in for a capital project because we wanted to nail the scoping down a little bit better and get better pricing from the consultant. But like I said, there's so many moving parts to this, and COVID throws in an additional moving part to this whole thing that it's kind of been put on hold. We anticipate probably the $150,000 to $200,000 range, though.
Thank you.
Dixon, and then George.
Do I remember this right? Did an RFP of some sort start to get developed for Seneca Street Garage redevelopment? What's the situation with thinking about redeveloping Seneca Street?
Seneca Street, maybe Dan can address this a little bit more than I can, but I know that planning was looking at trying to do something similar to Green Street Garage redevelopment, and I'm probably botching this up quite a bit. But Seneca Street right now, we need to keep it standing for at least a few more years. Eric Hathaway and Tim Logue and myself are meeting with our structural engineer next Friday to see what we can do to strengthen some of the beams where we've noticed some problems before. So we're trying to keep that garage alive as long as possible. But I don't know, Dan, if you have anything more to add to that. But.
Well, there hasn't been anything definite. There has been conversation about doing something similar for the Seneca garage, like we did for the Green garage, where we put out like a request for proposals to see what a redevelopment project might look like. In order to do that, we would have to develop kind of a program or what elements we would like to see in there. We have had some preliminary conversations with the town of Ithaca about possibly using a portion of their lot as well for some kind of redevelopment site there, and they're open to that kind of conversation. So, but that's really as far as it's gone. There's been some talk about that possibly being a good site for an intermodal transportation, like intercity buses could possibly go there. That's about as far as it's gotten. We would probably want to do, like I said, put it out to the development community, and see what kinds of proposals came back, see if anything really looked attractive, and go from there. And that wouldn't really happen until the Green garage is up and back and operational.
Thank you.
Great. I think I had George next.
Thank you. This question might be for the water department. Earlier today, we had our water quality subcommittee meeting from TCOG, and Roxy Johnson was there, who really is really smart. We're really fortunate to have her. She was talking about some infrastructure possibilities that would, see if I can explain this right. She said we can get water from Bolton Point in an emergency, but we can't transfer water to Bolton Point in an emergency. But there's talk about making a connection on West Hill, not because they necessarily will need water, but because Cornell might need water from Bolton Point, and then we can kind of help Bolton Point do that. That's one thing. And the other thing she mentioned was that when we built the new water plant, we built it in phases, and we weren't positive all the things that we would find in the water. And one of those things was manganese. And at the current time, we don't have online monitoring instrumentation before the water actually gets to the plant. And I'm wondering if that is something we have in this budget, or if that's something that's going to happen later.
So I'll try to answer your questions in order. Yes, we do have the capability to interconnect between Cornell and Bolton Point. That was made. We've always had that ability at various points in the grid, depending on where you are. We have an interconnect feed us on West Hill. Bolton Point can feed us up off of Stewart Ave. We can be fed by Cornell in the Oak Circle, just to name a few. And we built in an interconnect system during the plant rebuild right on Water Street, which allows that to happen in one location. So we can feed mostly from Bolton Point back into our plant at that location. We cannot feed into Bolton Point because from the water plant, their transmission main is roughly 220, 250 pounds per square inch coming in at that location. So we have no way to force water back into their system. So the plan has always been to look East Hill up by the Maple Avenue water tank and build a pump station and force water into their transmission system at that elevation. And that is something that O'Brien and Gear already has a design for. So that's already in the works. But making that happen with all of the other infrastructure that work that has to go in place, and contract one comes to mind, which is the dredging project rehabilitating the 60-foot dam and a new gatehouse and a new intake. All of that really has to take place. But I hope that answers that part of the question, that is a deficiency in the system for us to backfeed them, just purely because of hydraulics.
That answers the question. Thanks.
The manganese, that is correct. When we went to microfiltration, we felt that when the original plant was in place, it was a sand and anthracite coal system that seemed to do a better than normal job of removing some of the manganese in the water. It wasn't a monitoring requirement, didn't remove all of it, but we didn't know we actually had a problem with it. Anecdotally, if you talk to some of the older employees, they remember seeing black water come out in the heyday of summer, and they weren't really sure what it was, and they just sort of shrugged and assumed it was because it was antiquated infrastructure, what have you. When we went to microfilters in 2017, it became very apparent. We all know what happened that summer. So we started adding sodium permanganate to remove the manganese from the water, but it's an inexact science because it's added at the reservoir, and it takes several hours for the reservoir water to get down to the plant. So if you're adjusting for manganese concentrations sort of on the fly, it's an inexact science. By the time it reaches the plant, it could be something completely different. Maybe you over applied the chemical, maybe you under applied the chemical. So we have no real way to test at the head location and maybe in intermediary locations on the way down to the plant. And so that really needs to be implemented. And that is another thing. I don't believe that that is funded in this current contract, budget. The contract that we were referring to with O'Brien and Gear would have to be modified to include something like that. They're already aware that we need a sampling system, an updated system. We did receive a letter from the DEC basically requiring us to do something similar. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be meeting with O'Brien and Gear, Roxy as well, and we'll be discussing that more seriously. The good thing is that we're getting into the colder months coming up where manganese isn't technically a problem. Of course, we need a little more rainfall would be nice, but so we've got a little time to figure it out before next summer. But right now it's a problem. Just for the public's sake, manganese is a non-hazard element in water. It's mostly a color issue, and it certainly stains things, and it's unpleasant. It's an unpleasant element that finds its way into the supply, and have ways to remove it. But because of the sampling issue that we're talking about now, we'd like to fine tune it that much better. It certainly saves the city money. Obviously, if you're over applying a chemical, you're just wasting product. So there's a whole host of reasons why you would want to do this. So that's something that will, I would assume, come out of several meetings with O'Brien and Gear, and they'll probably put together a report and a proposal for us.
Thanks, Scott.
Great, thank you. Other questions for our DPW staff? Okay. I guess what we'll do is, as we end every one of our budget meetings, we ask if there are any modifications to the list anybody wants to make. Does anyone want to add anything? George?
I just want to thank Eric Hathaway for his service to the city, and wish him a very happy retirement and a happy birthday.
You mean Eric Whitney?
Sorry, yep, Eric Whitney.
I was like, wait, where
Eric Hathaway cannot retire yet.
Just talked about him as the new
No.
parking person.
My
We're
bad.
not getting rid of him yet.
Just a couple points on Eric. Eric's been my boss for 15 years. I believe he was for a couple years before I started with the city in 2002. He left the city to take care of some personal issues and then came back to the city. So he's basically wrapping up a 37-year career. He's very much into camping at this stage in life. He's definitely ramping into enjoyment.
Great.
Yeah, he will be missed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'll add that there's not another job that combines the requirement for long-term serious planning and everything going to heck in an instant, almost every other week. And he and his team with grace and aplomb.
Well, he's definitely going to be missed. I asked him to, I've been saying this, so if you heard this, don't don't hammer me for repeating myself, but he needs to keep the bat phone open for all of us, I think.
He strikes me as the kind of person who would absolutely answer a call if you called him. So.
Well, I already had that discussion.
Great. Okay. So I'm not hearing any other changes that we want to make to the list for this evening. So just a quick overview of what we have coming up next. We get a little bit of a break for a few days on the 22nd. We will be looking at Youth Bureau, GIAC, Planning, Building, and Economic Development, and then all of our various community services. And we also added a conversation about community outreach worker to that. And I know there were some additional questions that came in about lead and reach, I believe, as well. So maybe we can talk about all of those pieces on that night. There was also a question about the Hangar Theater as well. So we'll add all of that conversation to next Thursday. It's really helpful if you have additional questions to try to send them out, especially because a lot of it sometimes means gathering information that is not always easy for staff to have right on the fly. So if you have questions about these departments, please send them out ahead of time, and Dan and Steve and I will do our best to get the answers for you. And I believe that is probably going to do it for us for this evening. So I gotta go finish running a different meeting that I'm also in at the same time. So I'll go do that. So I'll need a motion to adjourn so we can make that happen. Stephen, seconded by Donna. I saw Donna next. Sorry, Donna. So great. We'll see everybody in a week. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the staff.
Bye.
Thanks to the staff who joined us tonight. Bye-bye.